G'day folks, this is the must see and subscribe to Argonian here on YouTube, Bruzo Dragonius. Well, I know for sure that I got my disgusting human hairs and all that kind of stuff instead of my normal reptilian hairs and all that kind of stuff because, you see, I'm just wearing a bit of a skin, my human skin, or my human suit I should say. So, even though that I was going to end up putting a jumper on, unbelievably, like, we're not quite into spring yet. The time of this video is filmed, even though this is August, and the video will be out in September. Like, I must admit, like, it tends to be a bit odd that summer is getting more clearer than it normally should have, because of the fact being is that, well, we're not far into winter yet. Well, we're not. This is the last day of winter, I should say, the filming of this video. So anyway, since that I wanted to do this sort of video on this sort of occasion, which is of course which is basically a tradition that we have here in Australia, where school kids usually do, like around primary school and all that kind of stuff. And even though that we don't normally have, how should I say, Halloween wasn't really that much, not really much customary to us, you know, back in the 90s and all that kind of stuff. Here in Australia, we have the alternative, which is called Book. Like Halloween, well, Book Week is just basically 1 week in a year of the school year, of course, where basically it's a year celebrating reading books, celebrating children's books or children's literature and all that kind of stuff. And it's one of those occasions that, I should say, encourages kids into reading books, because it's a part of our education, and basically when we were kids, we just learned to read and all that kind of stuff at a very early age. You know, it basically goes around the whole entire world and all that kind of stuff. And there's this bit of a concept that we have, like, in our primary school years. That's an alternative. And seeing that this is a cosplay related genre of YouTube channel, I think it would be open to discuss and talk about this, because it's something that is a part of what I used to have as a child, or as a kid, as someone in primary. You see, one day a week, leading up to this day, our parents tend to get us, like, in costumes that are various book characters. From what I remember, it has to be a character from a storybook. So, say for instance, Harry Potter, or any fairy tales, like, I don't know, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, or Cinderella, or whatever. We could just basically be anything we want as long as it's from a book, which is basically the point of Book Week in all those parades. And our parents tend to go through many ways of giving us these costumes to wear at the day, whether it's mostly by, I don't know, going over to Kmart or those cheap $2 stores to buy us a costume that is, like, mass produced in a factory. And if our parents would have money, we tend to, like, either they end us renting a costume from a shop, from a local costume shop, or if our parents are very much crafty enough, they end up making us a costume. Like, I must admit, the parents that are very crafty into making such elaborate costumes for their kids, even if it's like animal costumes, even if it's full body animal costumes. I mean, with those kids that has those full blown animal costumes and that, I mean, those are the ones that are basically the kids in these book week parades to be envious of. Now, I come from some sort of a time period, like around the 90s, where basically that there is no such thing as there's no such thing as eBay. There's no such thing as online shopping. And even with that, you can't get any of those inflatable costumes like from Rubers and that you can get from eBay for, I don't know, probably $60. I'm talking about Australian currency and that from eBay or Wish. There's none of that. So the kids who comes in very elaborate costumes that their parents made, especially if they are, animal costumes, especially if they are animal mascot costumes, which is a very much of a rarity around my time. This one kid is like the envy of not only the parents, but to the kids at the class that they're in, or even the envy of the whole entire school. So the day of the parade is basically comes as it is. Instead of having lollies or candy as kids, there is some sort of thing where basically before the parade, as we've gone to the school, there is a library, stack upon stack of books. Not just books that you could actually, that belongs to the school library, but I'm talking about, of course, like really mint condition books and other knickknacks and all that kind of stuff, whether it's pencils or rubbers or, but it's just merely books, and they come in these, and it's all set up like, steel shows and all that kind of stuff. And usually they're like coming from straight hot from the publishers, And I remember going into the library and picking out, different books and that. Those come up with various genres and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking, some novels for the older kids, some picture books like, I don't know, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, or Spot, or Where's Wally, or there's a Guinness Book of Records I remember seeing, And even though that I'm not really the book person or not much into reading books, for some reason I was this kid that wanted to pick out a book or something that I'm very interested in and buying it. And that goes for all the kids and all, within my unit. And there's also like really cool science books as well and all that kind of stuff. And I remember that once we get our books and all the pencil cases and all the knickknacks and all that kind of stuff, we normally head down to the counter or something like that, basically a library. I mean, the counter of the library where you check out books. And there's some person in that with the cash register and that, We handed them the book and that, the person like scans it, and then we're off with our brand new books. I must admit that I was less likely to, read or whatever. It's going to end up being on the shelf for a very long time and all that kind of stuff. So, as this book and this kind of shop, this pop-up shop, is what we call a book fair. And even though that's like the event before the actual parade starts. Back in the day, that traditionally, when we just gone into the school and that, it's what we actually call You know, it's an out of uniform day. Like here in Australia, public schools included, and especially public primary schools, we have this thing called uniforms and all that kind of stuff. I know that in elementary school that you have monthly days all year round because there's no set uniform for American schools, like from elementary school all the way up to high school and then up to college. But here in Australia, we have uniforms starting from primary school, like for kindergarten, all the way up to year 12. Even though that year 12 uniforms are very much relaxed upon, like much more relaxed, much more lenient as than to primary schools, where you basically have to like wear a college a uniform of your school colours and that, either a polo shirt or a button-up shirt. But Book Week is just basically where it's a monthly day, but it's not really a gold coin donation. But yet we end up dressing up in fancy costumes of the characters and that, whether most likely assigned up to us by our parents. To be honest with you, when I was at primary school, even though that some of the kids get to choose what they wanted to be in Book Week, end up being most likely assigned a costume by my mum. I mean, there's this one stage where, I don't know, I wanted to be a dog. My mum ended up making me a sheep ghost costume and call me Gut and make it out that I end up being, supposedly to end up being like Casper the Friendly Ghost. I remember this one stage where when I finally ended up being the character that I ended up being choosing, which is basically Ash Ketchum from Pokemon, like cosplaying as Ash Ketchum. But back then, Pokemon seemed to be a bit of a big thing back in the 90s and all that kind of stuff. It's much more, widely watched and all that kind of stuff. It's the in thing. When I was at primary school, we were that so much into anime. I mean, ever since Cheese TV, puts on anime, that is like the pinnacle of kids' entertainment before school. Is to sit in front of the TV and watching anime. Right? I did ended up talking about this on my Akira Toriyama tribute video and all that kind of stuff. Whether, like how I said that we watch Pokemon and all that kind of stuff. Anime was absolutely the coolest thing to watch. That besides, watching, Nickelodeon and all that kind of stuff. On Cheers TV and that. So back to the subject of what really happens. So anyway, around the afternoon of the day, seeing that there was no change rooms in our schools and all that kind of stuff, there's no change rooms. I remember having to go back to my classroom and that, and usually get change up to my costume, and especially I was assigned by my mum, and some of them might end up being like Darth Vader or Stormtrooper, with the dodgiest plastic mask like where it's like that covers up to the front face only, and so we ended up going up into these costumes and all that kind of stuff. And then after that, we ended up being in our, like going as part of our year groups and all that kind of stuff. And in our classes, we used to go out into the quad and that, and they organised a bit of a parade for us to strut around in our costumes as our characters, cosplaying as our characters. And I remember that a teacher just goes up onto the stage with a microphone and announces the classes and that. I can't remember with the names and that they end up going with the names, but they'll just say, "Oh, here comes the year 9s," or it's from K. It's from the order of K to 6, like kindergarten starts first, then the year 1 kids, all the way up to the year 6s. And the teachers actually end up dressing up in certain costumes as well, or end up wearing wigs, as I do remember. And I remember walking around, like when I was at school, we didn't get to go out onto the streets and that around the school and that, but we ended up walking around the circle in the quad. Not like most schools where you just walk out onto the streets, and show your stuff. To be honest with you, I envy the kids that get to do that, Well, I sort of envy the kids that end up having the access to these inflatable costumes that you can buy, like the inflatable Rubies costumes and that. And a much more diverse range of costumes that you can actually buy to the days when I was a hatchling. Or, I should say, a child. And the thing about it is that besides being the parade, it's also doubled as a cosplay competition where the best costumes win the top prize. Which, of course, are most likely books and that, or a whole stack of books or whatever, like storybooks. So, looking back at it is, just brings, and even talking about this, sort of brings me a lot of I'm sharing you all of my nostalgia of, the nostalgia of being a child that is growing up in 90s Australia, especially here in New South Wales. Because also from what I heard about it, is that, well, for a start, Book Week, especially with the parades, Book Week is only a thing that's more statewide here in New South Wales. And then later on, the other states in Australia pick up that sort of tradition and all that kind of stuff. And now, even though that back then, even though there is no theme to Book Week when I was at primary school, but nowadays that there is a theme. I don't know if it's to cater to the rules of Book Week and that. Say, well, you can't dress up as X because it's this sort of wide theme and all that kind of stuff. That I think that schools are being even more stricter when they're about the theme. Well, I remember nowadays when I was a kid, we either get dressed up as or cosplay as any character that we want, and I'm talking about those of us that aren't really assigned to cosplay by our parents. So why do we have Book Week? Actually, no. First of all, when did these traditions first started? Well, basically, that Book Week sort of started around. I researched it around the 1940s, where it's just basically it's like a day to encourage people reading books and all that kind of stuff, and celebrating how much books impacts other people from an early age. Just basically I challenge you to a drinking game. Just drink every time that I say books or something like that. You probably will be drunk and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, And the parade concept, or book fair parade and all that kind of stuff, started New South Wales wide around, I believe, the 80s, or probably the late 80s, I think. And didn't go Australia wide until around the late 90s, from what I heard of it. But there's the thing. But the reason that schools end up having the book week parades is to encourage young kids to be in connection with books, you know. And I know that kids like to dress up and all that kind of stuff. So the reason why primary schools get kids to dress up in costumes is basically to allow the kids themselves so much more expressive, creative expressions. Also to the parents as well, to show off their craft and all that kind of stuff. If they are willing to, you know, make costumes for the young ones. But to us kids back in the day, that's the main thing that Book Week is about. Where you get to dress up as our characters. We get to like cosplay as characters. Not being ourselves in that. Then we get to cosplay as most likely the characters that we love. The things that we love. You know? Whether it's animals and all that kind of stuff. The other reason is, you know, to have those Book Week parades, is to bring the fun and freedom of expression, to encourage kids to start reading books. And going back at it now, it just brings out so much nostalgia and all that kind of stuff that I just wanted to share with you and all that kind of stuff. Even though that Book Week is last week. But here I am talking to you about it now. So I'm just going to wrap it up by saying, well, what are your thoughts on this sort of idea? You know, do you think it's a really good alternative to Halloween and all that kind of stuff? Or what do you think of it, basically? You know, you're welcome to comment down below. Even though that I wanted to bring some positivity and talk about positive things, and especially if it's like cosplay related, onto this YouTube channel, which is of course Book Week. Also, if you do like this video so far, make sure that you press the like button, so, you know, just to say to the YouTube algorithm that you do love this video. Also, if you want to support me further and like my content so far, make sure that you please consider subscribing to this channel, as even though that would be the most minute thing, or the most simple thing that you could do for a content creator like myself, but it does a hell of a lot for me. You know, it gets the YouTube algorithm to like me. You know. Although that, you know, I'm not tying you to a chair and say, oh, you know, just press that subscribe button, you know, or whatever, or forcing you to do it, because, you know, I'm not going to force you or anything. So anyway, the usual stuff to follow me on social medias and ways to give me money is also down in the description down below. I don't know, like, you know, other social medias and all that kind of stuff. And if you want to friend me on PSN or follow me on Tumblr or whatever, just look for my gamer tag. Or if you want to see me, look for my gamer tag of Bruzo and make sure that you friend me there if you want, you know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this. I love you all. Thank you so much for watching this to the end. I hope you do enjoy it. It's just some topic video that I wanted to bring out, and that I hope you do enjoy it. And anyway, thank you if you do and that. And as always, this is a must see and subscribe to Argonian here on YouTube and online in Battle of Black Marsh, Bruzo Dragonius, saying these words, saying, may His guide you all, and bye for now.